My conversation partner today is Reverend Chris Dela Cruz. Really looking forward to this. As I often say, these are one of my favorite things that I get to do here, and y'all keep coming back on the second Sunday of the month, so they must not be too much of a turnoff. So I love these conversation Sundays. Chris, please come up. It is my tradition to start these off with this profane, horrid device in my hand. I set it for 30 minutes so that everybody knows we're not going to keep them here forever. And so that I also try to limit some of what I can get a little long-winded. These guys know. Yeah.
Never.
So first, Chris, thank you for being here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I like to ask everybody is, how would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Sure. My name is Chris Dela Cruz. When I was in 6th grade, I ran for class council president, and the entire premise of my class council president campaign was, my name was so cool because it means Christ of the cross, Chris Dela Cruz. And then when I was in a job interview years later, someone asked me, "Are you aware that your name is redundant?" So that'll be the first thing I say. I am a Presbyterian pastor, an introduction that goes very well at cocktail parties. I'm the son of Filipino immigrants, born in Jersey. I love Kendrick Lamar and Taylor Swift, which you may or may not know are both attending the Super Bowl today. I'm an NBA basketball fan, and I do root for the New York Knicks. No Knicks fans here. It's all right. I am 39, which normally people don't like to give their age, but I look so young, it's increasingly advantageous for me to assure adults in the room that I'm older than I look.
This is actually one of my most frustrating things when I meet somebody and they're like, "Are you old enough to be a pastor?" And I have to ask, how old is old enough to be a pastor?
Right.
And they'll be like, I don't know, older than you. This usually comes from people who are older than me, right? And then I say, well, like, I'm 40. I'm like, well, I guess that's old enough.
We should tell folks that Jesus was 33, so we are
yeah.
up there.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not dead yet.
Yeah.
We got that going for us.
Yeah.
Sorry. Please continue.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you're part of an organization called Together Lab.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Together Lab, as implied in the title, really believes in the power of community. And I use the word power or just agency because I think a lot of times in this world, especially with just some stuff that's going on in the world right now, it feels like we don't have the power to do stuff or to make change or even just to have hope just within community. And so Together Lab believes in and helps harnesses the power of when everyday folks come together. And they do that through relational organizing, collaborative partnerships. The official word in our description is incubating new initiatives. That's trying stuff out, the lab part, right? See what sticks on the wall. In the sense of just bringing folks together to grow communities of care, to cultivate an Oregon where all belong.
Okay. Thank you. Some of us, especially our restorative justice team, have been seeing a lot of you guys lately. You brought the ACLU in back in like November or December, invited a bunch of us to come and listen to what some purported best practices could be for the months ahead. And there's been some Know Your Rights initiatives and trainings.
That's right.
And I imagine a lot of other things. Is the office pretty busy these days?
Just a little bit.
How are you guys managing?
Honestly, the work that we do is what is grounding us in this moment, in that we find a sense of purpose of what we can and can't control, precisely because, what we do is bring other folks together, so we're never alone in that, and in fact, empowering others to be able to do the wonderful ministry that, folks do. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that, because it's challenging times.
Yeah.
I like this idea of being grounded in the work that you're doing, and I think there's some similar sensibilities here for so many of us in this room who are also quite busy with the things we can contribute to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got a specific role in Together Lab. What is that?
Yeah, so I'm particularly the director of youth initiatives at Together Lab, and I oversee what's called the Youth Solidarity Movement, YSM. And what's YSM? So the goal is to cultivate community for teenagers and community for the adults who support teenagers, so that young people can experience belonging in Oregon, right? So like all of us yearn for young people to experience belonging, but we're increasingly isolated and amid like a youth mental health crisis. So a lot of our listening of this initiative just came out of what young people are going through. And then there's systems that pit us against one another, right? And there's less in-person gathering spaces. And then we come at an intergenerational approach, because parents and caregivers can feel alone in wrestling and caring for teens, wrestling with questions of identity and like spirituality. And then even church leaders and other organizations feel alone, like overwhelmed, and want more capacity to care for young folks. So the invitation we have is like, let's not do it alone. Like, let's do the thing together, right? And so what we do is we try to connect teenagers in community where all belong. We provide support for parents and caregivers and all the adults who care for teens, grandparents, youth workers, coaches, teachers, right? And we also provide, because we can be a part of a larger network, we can offer things like statewide youth retreats. I was just talking to Erica about the retreat we had in January. We have workshops for youth workers, webinars, and spaces for parents about, for example, caring for LGBTQ youth, and we have a partnership with Trauma Informed Oregon. I can get into more of that. And the idea is just building resilience through being together.
I like that.
Yeah.
Not all of you may know this, but my start in vocational ministry was youth ministry. That's where I initially experienced my calling, and a lot of it was around the need for people to have connection, belonging with one another, especially young people. So you mentioned you mentioned the term youth collective, and that feels like one of those words that we're all going to think of differently.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just ask you what your definition of a youth collective is, and what does that look like potentially in our area?
Yeah, sure. So what we do, I talked about connecting teenagers and adults and community. So one of our main ways to do that is to activate and accompany local youth collectives of play and purpose, where young people can be noticed, named, and known in community, where young people's gifts and talents can be nurtured and celebrated. And one of our central values is that I said all belong. So like regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, socioeconomic status, celebrating neurodivergence, any abilities, just anything that society would try to divide us by, we celebrate the uniqueness while being in community. And most basically, the idea is having 4 or 5 local anchor congregations who come together, like ecumenical, an Episcopal church and a UCC church and a Presbyterian church and the United Methodist Church, all walk into a bar. No, they all come together.
That might be the adult collective.
Yeah. No, the churches decide, let's come together. And the most obvious reason to form a youth collective is just we have these very local churches all wanting to have belonging for young folks. Why not try to pull together people and resources and young folks so that you don't do youth ministry alone? You have a larger critical mass of young folks and families. The churches that have a shared sense of mission, a shared sense of safe space and affirmation for LGBTQ folks and for belonging for all. And that's you can just imagine the possibility of just by simply having infrastructure to come together.
Yeah. I and a few other pastors that helped start the Southeast Portland Youth Collective years and years ago.
Yeah.
And it's changed so much since then. And talking and working with you and some others has just delighted me to see how much it's evolved.
Yeah.
That was about like 8 or 9 years ago, and the Southeast Portland Youth Collective still exists. It was incredibly active during the Reckoning with Racism movement in ways that were appropriate for the kids that were participating in that, and also pushing ahead with that. It was active with Levin Land and Housing, trying to help faith communities and other spaces examine their property and see, like, can we use some of this for the common good? A conversation we've certainly had before, right? So there's a lot of potentiality in that.
Yeah.
But one of the coolest things at the start of it for me was seeing these different groups get together without that spirit of like turf. Like this is our church, and hey, what if we all get together and our kids no longer think we're cool? Like, well, guys, I hate to break it to you, we're not that cool. And we don't have to be. We don't have to be cool. They're not looking for cool. They're looking for belonging.
Right.
And another aspect that I really liked about that, having us all come together with these different faith expressions seemed to be almost invitational for those with no faith expression, or really maybe perhaps less represented faith expression also come in, because there was no like dogmatism that had to be claimed either.
Yeah.
It's more concerned with like, can we just show up and support each other, and do some fun stuff too.
Right.
Like, it's not only the heavy things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me share some of my experience.
Yeah.
It still gets me excited.
Right.
Now, you've mentioned that this is for parents and youth, and I'm just wondering if you could flesh that out for us. Like, how so? What does that look like?
Yeah. So part of the reasoning or the value of that is that in cultivating belonging for young folks and tending to the wholeness and mental health of young folks, a ministry of that includes accompanying parents and caregivers, includes accompanying just all the folks in congregations around what it what is it to support those young people. And so part of what we do is, alongside a youth collective, is to help form a community of practice for the parents and caregivers so that they also don't feel alone. So just literally just bringing folks together in an intentional way is, and having accompaniment. And so for youth collectives and congregations we are in deeper partnership with, we have one Together Lab and an organizer help bring those folks together and just hold that. And then for the parents and caregivers, that space is also accompanied by a local mental health practitioner, so that there is just resourcing and support for just in like just the. I'm a parent myself, and yeah, there's a lot to, in this day and age, of what it means to support a young person. Like just, I mean, there's the usual stuff of like friends and eventually dating and all those sorts of things, much less the increasing pressures that come from social media and from bullying. And so with that, there was an article that came out a couple of years ago that was talking about the issue, especially coming out of lockdowns, is not just isolation generally, because, you know, people after the lockdowns, you know, they were coming back together in bars or, you know, folks were technically like in presence with one another, but it was more like there was isolation of, there's a lot of these crises and pressures in the world, and people are feeling like they have to navigate it alone, right? So young people feeling like they have to navigate social media and a mental health crisis alone, and parents and caregivers like having to navigate that. But to come together in an intentional way and toward young people feeling belonging, that's what's possible. Yeah.
So I got a couple more questions that come to my mind around this. One is this led by volunteers? Is this led by you know, a lead professional? You mentioned mental health practitioner. So I'm going to ask you to address that first, so we're on the same page with that. And then I've got a question about like what it's like for teenagers to participate in this.
Yeah. So the organizers help. It comes in and helps bring together a larger circle of leaders. So that could be lay volunteers, some staff for clergy, to hold the space. And so one of our values is that young people are noticed, named, and known. So that comes out of Springtide Research, which has done research from thousands of teens from across the country, and what they've literally identified that, well, first of all, just in youth mental health, that in order to create spaces that best tend to that, they mention that you create spaces where there's connection and belonging, that young people have spaces to explore their sense of purpose and identity, and that young folks are equipped with the tools to meet realistic expectations. And when we're talking about connection and belonging and purpose, you're like, wait, this is what the church is about, right? And so what does it look like to channel that? So all that to say, one of the processes that's come out of that research is they've literally identified that when young people feel noticed, then named, then and known, and by known being like they feel a sense of that they can share in a way that they don't feel judged, then they're more likely to build connection and feel belonging. And so what we do is we bring together a larger circle of leaders that are oriented toward noticing, naming, and knowing young folks. Because the other part of that research is that they said that if you have a young person in connection with just 1 to 5 other trusted adults in their lives, that'll significantly increase the well-being of the young person, right? And so the goal of the collective then is about building relationship, right? And not that a program is really important, but if that program is oriented around relationship around peers and also around trusted adults who are really trying to meet the young people where they're at, that could have a significant impact on wellness and well-being of our young folks.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're doing pretty good on time still.
Cool.
So, what's a youth collective like for, say, your average 16-year-old participant?
Yeah. And so, it's gathering in community. I know there's like a camera or a microphone where the young folks are actually listening in, right?
Yeah. They're with Clay.
Yeah.
Over there.
And so I think part of what makes it unique is, at the most basic level, purpose and play. So you're gonna have the basic elements of young people gathering together and having fun and having new experiences. You may go to or different experiences like, you could go to the bowling, or you gather in the same space and you have games and food and relevant discussion that around pressures and also passions that young folks are dealing with. So part of our design is the gatherings are co-created and designed by the young folks based off of the listening of young folks and families. So our organizer would do continued listening, and we even have design processes where the young folks have input and design into the space itself, so they feel ownership in it.
Okay, so I think we're addressing something that's coming up for me.
Yeah.
It sounds like our particular, the one that we could be invited into, is not fully baked yet. And that means that it's still cooking. So we would have an opportunity, Erica would have an opportunity, some of our youth would have the opportunity to provide feedback and help shape this.
Yeah,
with other anchor congregations.
Yeah, so I think maybe to even move back to a second, the idea isn't like one franchise McDonald's program and you just come up. All the local youth collectives are held by the anchor congregations, and there's the co-creation and what the gatherings exactly look like, or the missions and goals are co-created locally from the folks, but the organizer in Together Lab, we just help draw that out and provide infrastructure and capacity for that.
Can I share what I like about that?
Yeah.
So when we were forming the Southeast Portland Youth Collective, we had our first youth collective gathering. Oh, we got so many teens to show up for this from all of our different churches over in that area. And we sure put on an event. There was lots of stuff that happened. Most of it went over like a lead balloon. There was, of course, a station that was made, an art station, where everybody lays down, and they've got to do an outline of themselves, and then they got to cut out newspaper things and things from a magazine and make a body collage. And there was collective groaning when that part came up. And one person said, "Really? This is the third time in a year I've had to do this."
Oh.
Guess how many teens were involved in shaping that event? None. Zero. That was one of our big learnings. We had to start inviting the teens that we were working with to the table. Otherwise, it's a bunch of grown-ups' ideas of what a good time is.
Yeah.
Turns out that wasn't a good time. But what happened afterwards were increasingly, more beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for. It's not a franchise. I appreciate that because I think the idea that like you guys are not the only ones who holds the perspective that's worth considering. That's important when shaping something like this. Otherwise, it's not a collective.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, basically, what we do is provide the container, and again, the infrastructure and capacity for the collective and young folks to, and lay leaders to flourish, right? So that
and some level of staffing too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. The staffing is part of that infrastructure in order for that to do that. And similarly for the community, we provide for the parents and caregivers, and then we also provide workshops and leadership development for those lay leaders, and also support just for the larger community in their care for and support for young folks. Like the centrality of it, I think the guiding value is for young people to experience belonging.
Yeah.
Which I think is a central yearning that I think we all have.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it ends up being like we may want some specifics that we just can't really have just yet.
Sure.
Like, hey, Chris, is this weekly? Don't know. Is this going to be monthly? Maybe.
Right.
We'll have to figure that out together.
Right.
Yeah.
And the key again is the process by which the young folks are in that co-creation, where the parents are in that co-creation. Where I'm literally like imagine like just a wall sheet, and we're kind of designing together. Yeah.
I know about wall sheets. Lots of wall sheets. All right. I'm reviewing some of the things that really mattered to me when we were forming this, and I think you've covered most of my questions. Here's one I want to call out a little bit, but you don't have to answer it. We have other teens besides just the ones that we see come to our services who utilize the campus in different ways, and this is not prohibitive to them coming if they would like.
No, in fact, I think what the opportunity when you have different congregations forming this youth collective is a space that is at once helping the young people in each of those congregations thrive when they come together. There's just that literally more teens that can be together, also that then provides a space that can also just provide for any middle or high school or young person in the community to have community and belonging. Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about like guiding values and some things that may seem a bit like abstract, and I'm wondering if you can help ground this conversation with like a story or an example.
Yeah, no, there are a couple of things I could say. So we just had our retreat in which we had multiple of these youth collectives, and so we're some folks from East County, from Covenant Presbyterian and Gethsemane Lutheran came to that, along with our collective forming in Washington County. We had some kids from the far south as our Bend Youth Collective, and then Southeast Portland Youth Collective, and some others from Portland. So one, so there's both the very local youth collective and then being connected to this network of youth collectives then provides a retreat experience where young folks are coming together from different parts of the state. And what's really cool about that is I saw like young folks who may feel isolated because they're from either maybe a marginalized folk, or they're just, they're different, or, and then they find their own people, like, right? And so they don't feel alone. The retreat, of course, also provided, connection just within the folks from their own regions. And it was a retreat around what it means to just have belonging. The mantra of the retreat was, I am enough, I belong, and I am becoming. And so it was just powerful for those young folks and the adults who were there to all be reminded of that. And so that being centered, the kids all wrote down on like a circle of different colors, like, what are ways that I am enough and that I bring my gifts and talents to the world? And so that's the opportunity that can be had in this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to open it up to a Q&A for any questions y'all may happen to have. And if we have any questions from the youth who are currently with Erica, Clay or someone, please feel free to come on over. Yes.
You support a lot of marginalized communities, and I'm curious whether the push to or the attacks against diversity programs and what I see is a lot of corporations seem to be folding or minimizing their support for programs like that. Has that impacted the support that you're seeing for your program?
That's a great question. Well, because you've heard this word over and over again. Our central kind of guiding star is belonging for all, and Oregon in which all belong. We, as of right now, thankfully, I don't know if we've had any immediate impact in that, other than the impact of the communities that we are serving. There are folks we know who are connected with that don't feel safe to go to the grocery store, or there are trans youth that we are connected with who feel afraid. And so far, in some sense there's great impact, and our strength is our togetherness, and so that's really played out. And our strategy and intentionality around local level grassroots. But thanks for asking.
Hi, thank you so much for this. My question is, there are so many young people today who are not churched, spiritual but not religious. I meet a lot of those. And also there are young people who are not in officially Christian churches, synagogues, other kinds of religious gatherings. And I'm wondering if you have any kind of outreach to those youth who also are feeling this pain and may not have a place to go.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Well, I think part of the power of the youth collectives, which feel ownership in these young folks. So even, our experiences has been folks who may not necessarily go to church on Sundays. You find them in the youth collectives, and I think because of the culture, the critical mass of young folks there, the culture that's cultivated around belonging, while still being kind of rooted in our wisdom traditions. And many of the youth collectives are very involved in the larger community, and so through that there are connections with folks of all different faith backgrounds, or non-background, or backgrounds that are not necessarily faith-oriented. Yeah.
So a question along with that is, I know back when we were starting this off years ago in Southeast Portland, we had talked about we're inviting this group and that group, and a lot of folks weren't, they just weren't super interested. They had enough stuff going on in their own communities, in necessarily like joining us at that time.
Yeah.
So do you know if youth collectives around the state have actively invited, say, like Unitarian Universalists or pagan communities, synagogues, mosques?
Yeah, so the youth collective we work with in Bend includes a Unitarian Universalist church.
Okay.
I will say most of the other, just in the years that Together Lab has done, and then this particular iteration of the youth solidarity movement is relatively new. So our starting base is anchor congregations that have been from the mainline progressive church.
Okay. So this is a starting point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do Judy first, and then Rita. And anybody over with Clay, like now's your chance, or you'll have to wait until coffee and cookies.
Where is this type of gathering held? Is it in a church, or is it in a more neutral place?
Great question.
Yeah, so again, we work with, depending on the local youth collectives, partnerships in the community, it depends. I mean, so some youth collectives have gatherings, not necessarily in the sanctuary, but in another youth building of the church. But others have done it in community centers, and maybe even sometimes the gathering is the group building space. Other times you gather in a bowling alley or a pizza place. Depending. I know. One youth collective that's often gathered just in a local cool coffee shop. So it's, and other times the gatherings are at a soup kitchen or at like a community project. So that, yeah.
Thank you. So it's still cooking.
Well,
for what we would be a part of, it would still be.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure that out together.
Yeah. Well, you've alluded to a weed. I don't know if we've said that explicitly. Yeah. Should I?
Do you have an invitation for us? Yeah. Let's talk about that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just to be transparent. You've been in there is a conversation among different potential anchor congregations in East County to form an East County youth collective. So that's, yeah.
Erica and I have gone to a couple of meetings at this point. We're exploring the possibility. But we also wanted to include all of you in on this conversation because it affects more than just us. Yeah. All right, Rita? No, Judy, it looks like you had another. No, okay. Rita?
Thank you. It'd be wonderful if more of these youth that children or teenagers can get involved in. And I seen on the TV, it'd be so wonderful if they all can go out toward nature and explore nature. Yeah. And explore museums, explore educational programs, entertainment programs, arts, and
thank you, Rita. Those are great ideas.
Yeah, and again, I think part of it's it's interesting to try to explain or to present that a lot of our value is in the process of creation. So the end result can look different in different youth collectives. The key is the co-creative process involving the young folks themselves, involving the parents, and involving help. So we call the kind of the staff person the organizer, which maybe makes us sound like those TV shows where an organizer comes with containers and things like that. Not necessarily like that, but more someone who is just harnessing the relational energy of the folks to create something greater than ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
All right, you could return back to your seat. Everybody, thank you so much. We went about 5 minutes over.